Dope. All right. There we go, there we go. All right. We are live. Dope.
Good to hear. Good to hear.
Hey there, James.
All right. Chris, you ready to get going?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, let's do it. All right. So, welcome everybody to Paul's Garage Live, episode 2.
Good to be back.
Yeah, good to see you, Shoeless.
Good to see you, Paul.
I'm having a little bit of technical difficulty right now with the Facebook Live, so I'm going to rely on you, Shoeless, to kind of keep us clued in on comments. I'll let you know when I'm getting back up and going.
Can do. Thank you, Debbie. Appreciate it.
So what we're trying to do each week is have a conversation with members of the climbing community, covering all things climbing, sharing stories, and stoke. So this week we're going to have a theme. Each week, like I said, we're going to have a theme. This week's theme is going to be working on you. So everything throughout the different guests that we'll have, that we'll be bringing onto the show, are going to kind of highlight different aspects of working on you. Our featured guest is going to be Ian King from Onsight Resoles. You know Ian, right, Shoeless?
Yeah, Ian's great. Can't wait to talk to him about Resoles and everything.
Yeah, so we'll get a little bit of info about his business, what he's up to right now, a little bit more about maybe some of the stories that he has from being on the road across the country. So, and then we're going to have featured Crag this week is going to be Pilot Mountain. So we're going to have a couple guests on, some experts on Pilot Mountain to talk with us about that. So moving into news and updates. So not a whole lot of new news. I think that, last week we talked about the bill being passed and how that was going to help people. So we're probably hoping to get some stimulus checks here soon. I had heard recently that the loans to small businesses, we're going to be starting to take applications today at some banks and others as soon as next week. So,
Exciting.
Yeah, so that's good to hear, man. So I think that for all those folks that work with small businesses, Triangle Rock Club certainly included in that, that, hopefully the businesses and owners will be able to get access to those loans to start being able to pay employees, sooner with those funds. So
Definitely.
So aside from that, what else are we doing? We're staying at home, right? That's what people are doing. I've gotten a question a couple times this week, actually, about, are you still climbing outside? One of my colleagues, Amanda, who works at TRC Durham, was saying, is this something, I'm seeing kind of it going both ways. Some people are saying, no way, no, don't do it. And other people are like, there's a safe way to do it. I've had text messages from other people around kind of asking similar sorts of things like, hey, I heard this place may still be open. what's the beta ongoing there right now?
Mhm.
So, yeah. So, I mean, what do you think, Chris? I mean,
It's a really complicated question, and it's really hard to, say for sure for other people what they should or should not do. But obviously, it's the safest thing to do is to stay home right now. That's what is what is being recommended as the safest thing to do. But at the same time, there's certain decisions you can make to be safe if you are going to go out.
Sure. And I think that, the key thing that I guess that I want to kind of think about is like the science of it. And, they're saying that, if you're within 6 feet of somebody, potentially even talking to them, you can potentially get sick. So like large groups of people that aren't currently like cohabitating together is probably not a good idea. If you're going somewhere outdoors and doing something where you can't keep that safe social distance, then you really it needs to be someone that is kind of significant other, roommate sort of scenario, I think.
Absolutely. Somebody that you're already spending a bunch of time with.
Yeah.
Which
obviously other things to consider are being low impact, not having, stopping at places and packing out, of course, everything, including human waste if you're going places. And the last thing to point out is that there's really limited places anymore that we can do this. Most of the outdoor areas are closed at this point. So the ones that are left open, it's unlikely that they're going to be empty when you go to visit them. So if they're there, I really discourage climbing, because again, we don't know how stuff may transfer, even over a day or two on natural surfaces like rock. So anyhow, just thought we'd touch on that a little bit. Obviously it's getting outside and being active is an essential activity. I think we probably want to minimize our impacts on getting too far from the house, doing things that are too risky at this time, just so that we're not wasting resources that otherwise could be saved.
There's also something to be said for the risk of injury and stressing the healthcare system more with an injury that could occur if you go out climbing, because that is always a possibility. So that's something to take into account, is managing the risk, because there's obviously already a fairly large load on our healthcare system as is, and straining it further with a climbing injury might not be the best thing right now. So it's another factor to consider.
Yeah, exactly. All right, well, let's move on. Are you taking a look at the questions? Any questions or comments?
Yes, I am. We don't have any questions rolling in yet, but I'll let you know when we got some stuff coming in.
Cool.
Glad to see everybody there in the chat.
Yeah, so we want to make sure that we're engaging with you guys throughout the conversation. So we're going to kind of try and let you know ahead of time kind of who we're having on, what the topic is, so you can go ahead and start throwing in your comments and questions, given that there's a little bit of a broadcast lag. So here next in the What Are You Up To section, we're going to be talking with Nick Cornejo and Dakota Bradstreet. They are both regulars at TRC all over all of the Triangle locations. So they're going to be talking to us a little bit about some home training. So I'm gonna see if I can go ahead and bring Nick on. So yeah, questions, start sending them in. If you want tips, considerations, things like that. So we're gonna go ahead and bring Dakota up and get Nick in.
Absolutely. Hey, Dakota. Let's get in it. Ooh, hey, what's up, Nick?
What up?
How's it going, bud?
Pretty good. How are y'all?
The Cornejo. Man, I'm digging the stash. Let's go.
Oh, he's growing out of stash.
It's getting good.
I got the beard going.
I am clean shaven.
Gotta build up. It's the quarantine stash. No
The
better
COVID
time
COVID
to
stash.
experiment.
Exactly.
Nice. So Nick, Dakota, thanks for joining us tonight.
Of course.
As I said, these guys are both regulars. If you've been to a TRC, you've probably seen one or both of them in the mix.
Definitely.
Dakota is one of our youth team coaches. And so he's in there most evenings working with our youth team, and is also a setter as well. Nick, he's, probably a nice way to put it is he's a gym rat. So
Yeah, it sounds all right.
you see him in
He's just not
there.
being paid for it.
I don't think Nick's climbed on real rock in about 4 years.
So when Nick's done with climbing all the new routes that are set each week, he's in there making up new and harder ones with his friends.
Constantly.
Boulder grind.
Oh yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about training at home.
Actually, speaking of that, we got a question from David asking if we can get a tour of the garage. Maybe we can get that the end of the segment.
Okay. Yeah, we can get a little tour here. Maybe I'll introduce you to some different things that we're doing during the
Absolutely.
segment. So training at home. What does that look like for you guys? How long do you train? What do you do? What are the things that you're doing?
Nick, you want to take it away?
Sure, yeah. So I guess for me, it took me a while to really like get into a groove and like understand like so I had to like set myself some like goals for like to actually train for, because like I'm not climbing all the time. Climbing like isn't the like major focus of the like each session, so like I've kind of been able to like step back and like reprioritize some things. I'm like, all right, like this like strength stuff that I don't like to do and I usually just let climbing do, I'll have to like kind of reprioritize. So for me, it's usually like it's kind of like I'm still keeping it as like my getaway from like work and stuff like that, because working at home, you can kind of feel like stuck in one place. So I've kind of tried to make sure I'm able to like go to a different room and then like just warm up, like put on some music real loud and like start like just doing some things and like playing around. So I've really tried to keep that like element of play into my workouts and training, just like I do with climbing as I normally would. It's like I have a handful of things that like are related to the goals that I've had that I try to hit at each workout, but like I'm not only doing those and I'm not trying to like go like super strict or like build out some like crazy workout. I kind of try to keep it playful in there.
Yeah, and we're all keeping it. We're kind of figuring it out as we go. How about you, Dakota? What sort of things do you do on to train from home?
Yeah, so I don't have a home wall, so Nick has that on me, which is sick. But I take a little bit of a different approach. I usually am pretty regimented, and I like to attack certain things. So if I feel like my finger strength is a weakness currently in comparison to all the other attributes of climbing, I will hyper focus on that for a little while, train it up till I feel like it's at a point where I'm satisfied with it. And then I'll pick the next thing that I think is the weakest link in my system. And then I'll start figuring out ways to train that. And it could be something as simple as like doing max hangs on a hangboard, or it could be something way more in depth, like a certain technique. Or just a body awareness thing. And I've always been able to, whether it's a little research through Google or YouTube, or talking to my co-coaches or other climbers like Nick has helped me before, I'll find a way to continue improving, even if I don't have boulders or, the gym or something to actually improve on. There's a way to always continue improving without having a gym per se.
Right.
So for me lately, it's been max hangs because I'm trying to get finger strength up. I feel like a lot of other things have fallen in place. So I'm just doing 9 hangs spread out with a bunch of rest in between, and pushing limit for 10 seconds till I feel like I'm giving out every time. So yeah, that's currently what I'm doing, and I grind that every time. And then sometimes if I feel like I'm feeling a little fatigued, I'll back off on all the workout and I'll kind of play it by ear, by feel with my body, make sure that I'm not overdoing it, because I can do that. I tend to overdo it. And then I'll usually finish it off with just body weight antagonist things for the most part. So it could be push-ups or dips or squats or something, just to keep body strength well. Because a lot of climbers right now are doing a lot of hanging, and I think remembering the rest of your body too could help out when we all come back.
Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
Oh no!
Looks
Really?
like we lost Paul.
We lost Paul.
Oh no.
That's not great. Well, while we're getting him back, how do you guys change up? So you talked a little bit about how it's somewhat different from your guys' normal workout, but besides that, what do you guys do to keep it interesting? What are you adding that's like a fun thing for you guys to keep the stoke alive, since there's not a gym with a bunch of new sets and a bunch of other people around? Did we lose Nick too?
No, is he not there?
Uh-oh. Whoa.
All right. Well,
So let's see.
I've been enjoying
There he is.
these. I can still hear you guys. I don't know if you guys can hear me, but
Gotcha. We just got you back in.
Got you back.
Okay.
okay,
Cool.
okay, yeah. So I've been playing around with these. You guys still there?
Yeah, we're still here.
Yes. Okay. I've been playing around with the wrist wrench thing.
Gotcha.
My brother took a PVC pipe and like put a strip through it and like some weight on a carabiner on that thing, and like it's a forearm exploder.
Oh man. Yeah,
It's
those
fun.
things are great.
Much weight, it's like it gets so slippery.
yeah.
It's a fun way to kind of like tax the forearms a little bit more.
Okay. Definitely.
Those are great, especially for extensors too. A lot of people seem to lack on their extensor muscles, and those can get them
Oh yeah.
where they need to be fast. It can be kind of excruciating. For me, I usually will set a goal.
Experience forearm pump.
Yeah. For me, I'll usually set a goal. So like with finger strength, I have a certain size edge right now that I'm trying to be able to hang with one arm. And I just, for me, it's easy enough to stay psyched, just trying to push for that goal. And I think that's a great tool to use for motivation, is like Nick said earlier, set a goal, something that you're actually psyched on achieving, and then just hammer that out. And when you're done with that one specific goal, you can add something more fun in there, like doing one of the challenges that you see all over Instagram, or a wrist curler, or if you have like the opportunity to get on the home wall, then you can do some climbing after that too. But for me, I'm always very goal oriented, and I try to just chip away at those every chance I get.
Hey guys, I am back. I got disconnected there. A little must be some high use on the local bandwidth here in Raleigh.
Sure.
So one thing I wanted to did we talk about hangboards too much?
We talked a little bit about hangboards, not really that much.
Yeah.
So,
there was a question that came in from Paul Poto on Instagram before the show, just asking for a couple suggestions for some hangboard workouts. I'll kind of point up at my hangboard that you can see right there above the door. Basically the basic principle, and there's Nick's above his door. Basic principles
Nice.
it's time, the amount of time that you're hanging, right? So if you can build strength or you can build endurance. It just all depends on the amount of time that you're hanging and how hard it is for you to hang on that size grip.
Mm-hmm.
The interesting thing about hangboards is there's tons of different ways to like challenge yourself and progress, and it really depends on like the tools you have and like where you sit in relationship to that. So like a lot of us don't have weights at home to like add weight for like what we'd normally do in the gym. You just go and you grab the weights off the rack and like put them on your harness or whatever. So like there's a lot of different protocols that you can do, and there's a lot of ways you can make it more complicated or less complicated.
Yep.
I think a lot of it is just like keeping it simple and then like adapting to what you have to like get the training load, and then realizing that like you don't need to have everything perfect. It's like if you're trying hard, that's like what matters a lot on the hangboard most of the time. Like getting it perfect the first time or every time isn't like the most important thing. Like consistently challenging your fingers is how you get them strong.
Sure.
So
one,
like whatever you have, I have a couple strips of wood nailed to a piece of wood, and like that's all that I need to like work with it.
Yeah, no, I think that, you know, you've got some basic ideas. Like if you're trying to build endurance, you might do something like repeaters, right? And now, you know, at a time where we're not climbing, you know, maintaining some of your muscular endurance is maybe not a bad thing here, you know. So you might hang for 7 seconds and then take 7 seconds break, hang for 7 seconds, take 7 seconds break. Do this for as many times as you can. This is going to kind of simulate climbing, right? So when you're climbing, you're probably climbing on each arm is under tension about every 7 seconds or so. So by doing repeaters, it kind of simulates, you know, the amount of stress that you might go on a climb.
And I have one that I've always used for more local endurance things, which isn't the thing I work the most, primarily because I boulder. But if you do longer routes or you're interested in building up some power endurance or even just arcing, depending on how hard you go with it, if you take a chair or a stool and put it like 2 or 3 feet behind your door sill from that you're hanging on, and you put 2 toes on it, just enough to support like you would with 2 feet on the wall. And then you just create a circuit 1 through like 20 or however, whatever number you want on your hangboard holds. Then you just cycle through from 1 all the way up to 20, and then you go back to 1, and you can just keep doing that for whatever amount of time is challenging for you. So for me, when I first started doing it, it was like 5 minutes, and then I've gotten it up to about 15. So you can play around with these things and make it simulate exactly what you want to do, although it's not as fun. You know, we got to do what we got to do. It's kind of up to us to come out the other side.
You know, the other thing that I've been doing, which is switches it up a little bit. A lot of times people will do their hangboard workout at the beginning or at the end of their climbing sessions, right? Because the hangboard is kind of away from the climbing wall. Well, if you've got a hangboard and you've got a workout space, you know, you can do like an integrated workout, right? Where you maybe do some push-ups in between sets of your hangs, maybe add in some core work, and kind of create like a circuit of activity so that you're kind of doing active recovery, doing something in your downtime. So something to consider. Hey, guys, thanks for joining. We're gonna bounce on to the next topic, which is Adriel Tomek. She is a, so yeah, appreciate your time, guys.
Sweet. Thank you. Later, Paul. Bye, Nick. Get out of here. Be gone.
See you later.
Get out of here.
All right.
All right.
And then let me pop up Adriel.
Oh, we still got Nick somewhere in here.
Yeah, he's still there. Hey, Adriel.
Did I pop up there?
Not yet.
Yep, we got you live over here.
All right, am I on?
Yes, you're
indeed.
on. You're
So is
on.
Nick.
Nick is, I think, frozen in time there. So.
Nick is stuck here forever.
Yeah, he'll just his grin will be there zooming with us for.
I'm just gonna keep looking at that.
Time.
Just keep them there.
Exactly.
So again, everybody, start thinking about comments, questions. Adriel Tomek is a physical therapist. So she is also a climber at TRC. Yep, she's got
Oh, yeah.
yes, recent bouldering league swag shirt. Some real nerdy gym references there for you. You gotta be around TRC Morrisville to get that. So yeah, so she's around the gym all the time. She's usually, her and her husband Kyle, who's going to be joining us later, are usually crushing it during our adult leagues.
Cheers to that.
Yeah, Crushers, reigning champs. So let's talk about physiotherapy, physical therapy.
Yeah.
What's the difference?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks for having me on, you guys. These are three of my favorite things: PT, climbing, and homebrew, which we'll see later.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I'm very excited about this. But yeah, physiotherapy. So the company I work for, they use the term physiotherapy, Results Physiotherapy, because it's synonymous with physical therapy, but it's what every other country uses, basically besides the US. Typically, it implies that the treatment is more manual focused and more hands-on treatment. So that's kind of how it originated in Australia with the training they did there.
Okay. So physio is more hands-on treatment versus physical is more like exercises given for you to do at home.
Yeah, it's still physical therapy, but yeah, it's I guess it implies more of a hands-on treatment. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So some kind of like body work or those sorts of terms that people.
So manual therapy is like soft tissue mobilizations, joint mobilizations or manipulations, dry needling. I do quite a bit of dry needling, especially to my climbers. Climbers usually need it quite a bit with the tension we hold in our upper traps, like up through here, a lot of tension up through there.
You don't say climbers get injuries.
Right.
Pretty common.
What did you think? I thought it was a pretty easy on your sport. I don't know.
Yeah, right.
No injuries.
Yeah, climbers
right?
they're actually pretty fun to treat because climbers are super motivated. Like they have their goals and their projects. I think it's important for us as climbers to seek treatment too. I think it's easy for us to push past the pump and sometimes push past the pain. And we tend to kind of normalize pain, that can be a bad thing, to normalize your pain and to just push past it. So I think it's important for us as climbers to know, where our physical limits are and when we might need help with that.
Right. So you're not always like, can the project be sent with 9 fingers? Maybe.
Right.
Should it be? Probably not.
Christy in the chat is asking what dry needling is. Do you mind kind of running us down with what that is?
Yeah. So dry needling is it's with the use of a needle, a very small needle. It's the same needle as an acupuncture needle, but it's a different methodology. So it's intramuscular versus just subcutaneous, which means just under the skin. That's what acupuncture is more like. So dry needling, it releases the muscle from the inside. So I'll put the needle into a trigger point, and it will reproduce the patient's pain.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
Yeah. So it's a way to get a trigger point release.
Gotcha.
So, so what other sorts of things can you do? I know that we're probably all, a little bit less in physical adjustments, sorts of things right now. Are there things that you've been able to do to connect with patients during this time?
Yeah. Right now we're doing everything via telehealth. So all of my treatments with my patients right now are all virtual treatments. So it's kind of like what we're doing right now. So it's face-to-face. The treatments are really similar to what I would do in the clinic, but the biggest benefit is they're home and they're safe. And they're able to kind of be in their own environment. So I'll still do things like assessments and testing, education, exercise prescription. Plus, I also have the benefit of seeing them kind of in their home. So whether we need to look at their ergonomics of their work from home setup, or their climbing, like their exercise setup, that can be really beneficial, like how they hangboard or how they do a pull up, things like that. So it's almost a perk of the telehealth to be able to see their home setup.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense.
All right. Well, I really appreciate you taking some time tonight. Come on and tell us a little bit about physiotherapy. How can people, if people have any issues right now, if they're, are you taking on clients or anything like that? Are there ways that?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to talk with, if anyone ever has questions about, climbing injuries. I talk with my friends in the gym all the time about it. But if anyone has questions, they can always message me or reach out to me. I see quite a few climbers, and it's probably the most fun population for me to treat. There's a lot of injuries out there, especially climbers like necks and shoulders. I see quite a bit of that, like belayer's neck. So Paul, belaying is a technique that rope climbers use.
That's okay.
Just in case you needed that.
I get it. It's a joke.
No, but for boulders, actually, impact injuries are more common. So like low back injuries from, like the impact of a fall, or ankles, feet, knees. So I'll see quite a bit of that. Yeah. I would say probably the most common injury, if I had to kind of put it into one area, would be a tendon injury. So, tendons they're very different than muscles. They take time to adapt, and they need to be kind of gradually loaded. So that's something that I always take into consideration when I'm treating my climber patients. Climbing is a very complex sport. We have a lot of complex movements. So when you're talking about an injury with climbing, it's important to understand all the biomechanics of the movements and healing times and things like that. So I guess my biggest takeaway is for all the climbers out there who are dealing with pain or, something that's limiting their performance, to seek help.
Sure.
Definitely.
Yeah. All right. Well, Adriel, yes, cheers.
Is this a good segue to our next category?
That's right. We're going to keep it rolling on to a home brewing roundtable. So I'm going to pull people on here.
Don't even have to turn off the stream there.
What's up, guys?
So any questions you guys have about homebrewing, go ahead and drop them in if you guys are interested in. If you have any questions,
Set it there.
and we'll go ahead and start talking with people.
Yeah. So so we're going to have kind of, like you said, a cross section of folks on here.
Very excited to see everybody's setup. I'm already looking at everything. It's very exciting.
You maybe recognize some of these people. We'll do a quick round of introductions. But start the comments, questions about homebrewing, how to do it, what to do. We're going to be talking about a lot of this. So we've got Kyle Tomek here. Kyle is Adriel's husband, also climbing partner, also reigning co-champion adult leagues. So Kyle is also a home brewer, obviously.
I've got the setup going right now.
Nice.
Get some visualization there for everybody.
Nice. Non-climber, I brought my brother in, Dan Klem.
Hello.
Dan and I have been doing some home brewing for 6, 7, I can't quite tell how many years anymore. It's
Gotta be going on a decade there, bro.
okay. It's getting a little bit. It's getting up there.
I think so.
So I brought him in a little
Paul.
non-climber perspective, but certainly a big big beer fan. And then Bob Silk down here, we have Bob is longtime member of TRC, has been doing a lot of outdoor climbing for many years throughout the Piedmont and North Carolina and greater parts, and also a very integral member in the Bond Brothers Climbing Club. So I know Bob was right up there with me with, right on the tails of Gary Moe, who had like over 50 check-ins in around a year for a weekly meetup. So, so Bob, how's it going, man?
Going good.
All right, so let's start it off. Let's have and then Chris, of course. Chris, tell us a little about your background.
Oh man, I've been my dad has homebrewed for as long as I can remember, so I'm just been brewing with him as long as I can help out. As soon as I can help out, I've been doing what I can. So got that experience a little bit.
Kyle, how about you? About how long you been brewing?
Yeah, so it's been about 6 years I've been brewing, just on and off here and there, when the time's right. Right now, I ran to the homebrew store right before everything got locked down to buy supplies for about 3 or 4 beers. So I've got one here in the fermenter, transferring over to the keg, going to be ready to drink at the end of the weekend, and then brewing one more just in case this one runs out really quickly. So
yeah,
probably pretty likely.
Yeah, definitely.
Dan, how about you? You kind of alluded, we've been brewing for about 10 years. Tell us a little bit more. You kind of picked it up. I left off a few years ago and you kind of picked it up, but tell us a little bit about your.
Sure. So like Paul said, I bought Paul actually a home brewing kit for Christmas about 10 years ago. I think my little brother Matt pitched in on it as well. We did about 4 batches of beer. 2 of them were really bad.
Also, they were made in Paul's garage.
Hey,
It was in that garage, yeah.
Pre-climbing wall.
That's right. First beer ended with Paul elbow deep, making sure that this gasket was coming out. So that was our first failure. And something you'll learn really quickly as a home brewer is, unfortunately, you will come across a couple failures.
definitely.
So, it requires some patience. You do have to put your time in. But yeah, don't brew as much as I'd always like to as a homeowner, but try to get some in. We've got a little kegerator here with our little Plymouth Rock logo. So I am drinking a coconut porter that I made right now.
Nice.
Cheers, y'all.
That looks delicious.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Well, cool. Well, thanks, Nando. Bob, tell us about yourself. How long have you been brewing?
So I've been homebrewing for about 15 years, just about as long as I've been rock climbing regularly. I started out just with a few friends. We collaborated on one batch. I picked it up as a regular hobby. The rest didn't exactly follow along. But I've got my equipment set up behind me here. I brew what's called all grain brewing, which is taking a home brewing to kind of a next level. Extract brewing is a good, easy way to get started. You can make some really good beer that way. I've got the extra set up to be able to take it back a step and start with the grain to get that malt extract that the easier intro to home brewing starts with.
All right, cool. Well, what so about how big's your setup there, Bob?
I've got the capacity. My tanks or kettles are 15 gallons, which lets me make about 10 gallons worth of beer at a time.
Okay. Awesome. And then how about you, Kyle? What kind of setup do you run out there?
Yeah, so I'm mostly just doing extract brewing. So like Bob said, it's pretty quick and easy. Someone's already taken the malted barley and extracted all the sugars from it. And then I can just pour this powder or syrup into my 5-gallon setup here. So one of the steps is already done for me, so it makes it a lot quicker and easier. But I've got a 5-gallon setup where doing fermentation in buckets and then transferring to kegs instead of bottles.
Nice. And then Dan, how about you?
So I typically do 5-gallon batches, but with the boil off, usually looking to get about 7.5 gallons out of my boil. you do a lot of transfers, so you lose a lot of volume. So I'm looking to get about 5 gallons into a keg. So like I said, with each kind of step, you're going to lose like between a gallon or a half gallon, depending. So, but yeah, typically just about 5 gallons set up. And I'm also doing all grain like Bob.
Okay. So Dan, you mentioned you were drinking your coconut porter.
Mhm.
We in the Plymouth Rock brewing like to add fruit and stuff to our beers. It's maybe not the most traditional in styles, but it seems to be fun to kind of play with food and flavors.
Absolutely.
How about you, Kyle? What have you been drinking recently?
Yeah, so I've got pale ale here in the fermenter transferred to the keg. And so that's going to be pretty hoppy, dry hop with 2 ounces of hops to try to get a bunch of piney flavor out of that. And then I'm brewing here a Hefeweizen. And so that's going to be more of the flavoring from this one. It's kind of unique where a lot of the flavoring is coming from the yeast that's going to make these banana estery clove type flavors. So whereas a pale ale, a lot of the flavors coming from the hops, we've got Hefeweizen here that's going to have a lot of the flavor from the yeast actually.
Right.
So the Hefeweizen is kind of my favorite style just because it's kind of more unique and really good summer beer. So I'm excited to keep those on tap.
Nice. Yeah. Styles. That's kind of, an interest. Oh, well, Bob, actually, why don't you jump in? What sort of things have you been brewing recently?
So I'm drinking a black IPA right now. I just kegged a batch. My last batch that I brewed is a Saison, another good summer beer. So got some wheat in it, like the Hefeweizen that Kyle's brewing. This is another yeast forward beer, but it has some different character to it. The Saison yeast impart a bit more of a black pepper and spice character than the banana notes that you'll get out of the Hefeweizen yeast.
Right.
Awesome.
We got a comment in, Bob, that you have a nice conical.
Yes.
Yeah.
Also, my dad, who's watching at home, just sent me a picture of the starter for his Czech Pilsner he's going to make tomorrow.
Oh, sweet. Nice.
Delish.
Yeah. So I think beers are in a lot of ways seasonal. People are drinking different types of beers around the year. So I think as brewers, we're all maybe inspired a little bit about what we want to be drinking and when it's going to be ready. So it's like in most cases, it takes about a month if you're brewing a beer for the novice with kind of the minimal equipment setup. We have, a couple different levels here between Bob, Dan, and Kyle on the kind of the front end of the brewing portion prior to fermentation. But after fermentation, it looks like everybody's going to keg, which is really going to speed up the process for when the beer is going to be available to drink. So in general, it takes a good part of a day for a brew day. There's a lot of cleaning and setup. The boil itself usually takes about an hour. You need to be prepared for when that happens because a lot of times there's very, very much a lot of timing and things to do. But then sometimes it's just stand around and stir occasionally.
Stir and drink some beer.
Yeah.
Relax and have homebrew.
Yeah.
Indeed.
So
Charlie Papazian over here.
Yeah.
So how can people get into it? What's an easy, what anybody have any suggestions on if you're looking to get into homebrew? What would you suggest?
So one thing I would suggest is a book by John Palmer and also a website. It's called How to Brew, and it's howtobrew.com. And that website's got all the information you'll need. Chapter 1 runs you through everything you need for your first brew day. And then a local homebrew shop can supply a lot of the supplies you'll need. In Raleigh area, specifically Atlantic Brew Supply, right now we'll still be doing deliveries, and they have homebrew kits where you can buy buckets and everything you'll need for your first homebrew. So I think that's the easiest way to do it is howtobrew.com or buy the book, and then Atlantic Brew Supply for me is the closest shop.
In
Down there,
Durham,
dude.
Bull City Homebrew is right around the corner from me. They also do some intro to brewing classes where they'll do some brew demos in the shop.
Nice.
So another good resource.
A lot of it is, read a book, talk to some people about it, try it yourself, be willing to make a mistake, as Dan said.
And I think another thing too, sorry to jump in here, Paul, but one of the biggest things that helped me out forever, like I said, I brewed about 4 beers with Paul and we kind of fumbled all over each other the entire time. And then I finally went out and watched a friend of mine brew and realized you didn't have to be so scared of every step. It's a really easy process. You maintain some cleanliness, but it's really easy. If you can go out and watch a friend do it or somebody else do it. I know you said ABS, Kyle. They do kind of like in-store brew days from time to time. So you can go in there and like chat with them, but like watching somebody do it will help you immensely. I mean, observational learning.
Definitely. Definitely.
Nice.
So I'm going to say as well, my cousin and I, we started brewing together about 6 years ago. We recently started doing some classes as well. You can go to your homebrew shop and do some classes. But my cousin and I do have a website together, peninsulasbrewing.com. I can add it to the comments. And we do classes for beginners or classes for people learning how to take their brewing to the next level. And then a lot of like team building things for corporate groups to have a fun day together and then also get their beer and be able to taste it about a month later.
Nice. That's pretty cool.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's been really fun.
Nice. Well, I really appreciate everybody's time this evening to come in and join and talk about some beer, enjoy some homebrew.
Kevin Ling in the chat asks about a TRC homebrew bottle share when gatherings resume. I think might be a great idea.
That's a great idea, Kevin.
Definitely. All right.
Well, great, guys. Well, I really appreciate it. Thanks for coming on to Paul's Garage, and we'll see you guys around soon.
Yeah.
Cheers, y'all.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers, guys.
Good to talk to y'all.
All right.
All right.
Next up, we are bringing on Andrew Kornylak.
Yep, he's going to be talking to us about home cooking during quarantine. So if you have any questions, just go ahead and start dropping them in the comments. We'll chat about it.
Hey, how's it going?
How's it going, Andrew?
Awesome.
Good.
Glad to hear it. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, so I don't know if you've been following along with some of the show. Basically, we're going to start throwing out requests for questions and comments about cooking.
Yeah.
So I know if most people are like me during the stay-at-home, doing a lot more cooking at home. So anything from like finding new favorite dishes, finding new ways to do an old dish,
That's a good question, Bryce.
Things like that. So Shoeless, you were keen to kind of look into some of this stuff. So why don't you take it away with Andrew?
Yeah, I was following along on Andrew's Instagram, which is, by the way, is at Kornylak, last name there. But he's been doing these great features every night almost of his home cooking for the day, which has been really informative and really interesting to watch. So I wanted to bring him on, talk to you a little about that, about why he started doing that and what's.
I don't know how it started. I think I just was bored and I had been cooking and I like to cook, and I posted myself just cooking, just holding my iPhone over myself cooking, and a bunch of friends were like, "Oh man, that's great! You got to do it again." And they kept bugging me like, "What are you going to cook tonight? What are you going to cook tonight?" So I kind of just kept doing it, and it's fun, and I probably get like way more comments and traffic about that than my photography work. So maybe it's my my next calling, but
No, yeah, I was thinking. I've been watching some of your stories, and I'm like, yeah, this should be like a, kind of like a virtual cookbook or something.
Yeah,
Definitely.
yeah.
Like-
Well, so one thing I try to do, and I just realized this in the last couple of days. We're really lucky to have a kitchen.
Yeah.
So many of my friends, they live in apartments or whatever, and they don't have a stove. They don't even have a microwave. So like tonight, I showed how to cook like mashed potatoes and kale just using the microwave, and it was great. But like some people don't even have a microwave. I mean, they live on takeout and like going out to restaurants and stuff, and these days that's pretty tough. So you gotta be able to cook at home these days. Luckily, I like to cook. I have a family of 5, and I do all the cooking. So, but yeah, man, if you don't cook, you're in a tight spot. So
Definitely.
Well, I think we're all, like I said, my wife and I, we had been, very regular, eat out, 5-6 days a week.
Yeah.
We know how to cook. We've got a kitchen. We've got all the tools, the pans and pots. But it was just something that, with our lifestyle, we, just didn't allow time for. So we're doing a lot more of it now, obviously doing a lot more shopping of our food supplies. So you're kind of like seeing exactly what goes into each meal, which is a little bit more, as opposed to looking at a menu and picking something off a menu and being like, ooh, that sounds kind of good with this sauce, but you don't really know what's going in it. Versus like when you're making the dish yourself, you're like, oh, I only put a little bit of salt.
Right. Totally.
It's really good.
Yeah. I think that cooking for yourself obviously has utility now, but in the long run, it's a lot cheaper. You know what's going in your food. If you have food restrictions, you can kind of control what you're eating. There are a few food restrictions in this household, so I'm usually cooking a couple different things at once. And actually, once you get the hang of it, you can have a lot more variety than you could just going out or getting takeout or eating pizza every night. So there are some advantages, and like I said, it's a lot cheaper. I mean, that's really one of the main drivers for me cooking a lot, is that if we went out to dinner as a family every night or even once a week, it starts getting really expensive, so you buy stuff in bulk, you buy a lot of potatoes, you buy a lot of rice and pasta, and you figure out how to make different stuff every night and keep things interesting, and and then it just kind of becomes fun. I mean, I really enjoy it. And the stuff I like to make, you were asking me what I like to make. What I kind of like doing is making the staples, right? Like, how to cook chicken, how to cook a steak, how to cook rice well, and then riffing on that stuff. And what I like to do is I'll make like a stock one day, and then I'll use it the next day in another dish. And then you save that and reuse it in the next day's dish. And then you made a sauce for tacos, and then you use that sauce for mashed potatoes a few days later, and kind of like, kind of linking every meal to each other is kind of cool. And it's kind of a fun game. And like, and these days it's all about trying to not waste food, like what do you do with that stale bread? Don't throw it away, use it. I mean, saving things to make in a stock, cheese rinds. I mean, you can cook with banana peels. You can make a cake with banana peels. It's wild. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff you can do with food that you normally just throw away. And today that's pretty important. Yeah. So, and it's just like a good skill to have, because when you are you're making your barbecue and you realize you forgot to get barbecue sauce, you know how to whip some up from some ketchup and vinegar and a little maple syrup or something. So, being a little crafty with food is pretty cool. So,
definitely. And I think it's like the brewing thing. A lot of people that I know that are good cooks have made mistakes, and they're always looking to kind of improve
Yeah.
on their last rendition of the dish. Like this was
Totally.
really good, but it needs this, or
Could be better.
always tweaking.
Yeah. Yeah. You're like training, you're practicing.
Yeah.
all the
I was like,
time,
there's
you know?
there's a lot of like overlaps between the homebrew, the cooking,
Yeah.
and climbing, cause like,
Oh yeah.
the last set of group of guys were all geeking out a little bit on the equipment you need to do the different types of brewing. I mean, the same can be said with cooking. There's all like fancy dishes and sharp knife, cutlery, and things like that. But you can do something really good with simple. It's kind
With
of
very little. Yeah. Yeah. And that's pretty cool,
Definitely.
And again, these days, cooking has a lot of utility, but it also, like, you're with your family all the time, or your loved ones, or just maybe your roommates, you're stuck with them, and it's kind of a way to connect with people. You're giving them food and sharing food and that you made, and reminds me of food that my grandmother used to make. So there's there's a lot of kind of deeper connections that you feel a lot more these days than normal. But
sure. Yeah, absolutely.
We got a good couple questions from Bryce in the chat. I'll just go over one of them real quick. What's your go-to meal for a camping trip?
Ooh, camping trip, freeze dried. No.
Freeze dried?
He
says not Mountain House.
I kind of try to, if I'm camping, where honestly I do eat a lot of freeze dried. If I'm out like climbing or something, I don't want to carry a lot of stuff. But if I'm camping and I can bring food with me, there's a lot of stuff you can like make beforehand. Like you can make a chicken Parmesan out in the woods if you plan ahead, and you can make it and freeze it and then bring it out, and by the time you're ready to cook it, it's ready to go. And you bring your cast iron pot or whatever, and you can make everything in that pot. Make some pasta, make the Parmesan, make the sauce if you want. So and you might spend like an hour and a half cooking all that stuff, but what else do you have to do? And it's awesome. I was just, before all this hit, I was in New Mexico in the mountains doing a bunch of shoots back to back. And I was with a buddy of mine who had a van. And so we had a lot of stuff we could bring with us, and every campground, man, we would hit that campground and set up shop and start a fire and cook everything over that fire in stages. And it was amazing, and it was like the same stuff, like roast vegetables, pasta in a pot.
You're in no hurry usually, so you can do it.
Yeah,
exactly.
Right.
Take your time.
Right.
Well, Andrew, thanks so much for joining us, sharing us a little bit about some of your other passions. As Chris pointed out, Andrew's a very talented photographer as well. So you can follow him on Instagram at Kornylak, and kind of see, get some tips from him on his cooking, as well as some of the beautiful art that he's making. So.
Cool, man.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks for coming on.
Yeah.
Right. Appreciate it, Andrew.
Yeah.
All right,
Andrew.
So next up, we've got Coach Bradley Hilbert. So Coach Brad is the head coach for the Triangle Rock Club. And he's going to be joining us here to talk a little bit about coaching philosophy and some training tips. So what's up, Brad? How's it going?
What's going on, guys? I was just admiring how many people you've been able to bring onto the show, and just the orchestration of all this is pretty mind-blowing.
It's all Paul. He's been crushing it.
Like, I just want to congratulate you right now for the fantastic job you're doing, and thank you for giving the community a place to come hang out.
Yeah, no, I think it's been a fun kind of challenge to figure out how we can kind of keep talking and bring in different voices. I figured it was the more the merrier to some degree. Try to get more voices in. So
Absolutely.
So yeah, I know Brad and I had talked a little bit earlier this week, kind of about the uniqueness of this situation and how our community had very much been interpersonal, but now we have the opportunity to reach a broader audience since everything is happening virtual. What do you think are going to be some of the interesting takeaways that we have kind of coming out of this, Brad?
Well, I think just having this virtual community, there's some interesting things that I've noticed. I was on a yoga morning live with Dina, I think was the yoga instructor. And I noticed that John Muse, who is the athletic director for USA Climbing, and he was on there. So I thought it was really cool to see that someone in Colorado, or maybe he's in Salt Lake City now, there are probably live communities there. I don't know, but he's in our Triangle Rock Club live community doing yoga. So it got me to thinking, like, maybe TRC is really like pushing this whole virtual community and coming together. And it's cool that we can take this local thing that we do in our community, and now it's on display for everybody. So we can welcome people from all over the country, where usually we just go to the gym and maybe hang out with our own groups. I think the expansion of our groups is a beautiful thing that I've seen, that there's no more geography restrictions.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. That was pretty interesting. When you brought that to my attention.
Positive. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you become a coach?
People quit.
Oh, right. Okay. So the person before you, right. There was a job opening, right?
Yeah, right. So, I came here. I was working the front desk. Previously, I was a professor in Korea, and when I came back home, I followed my passion and got a job at TRC, working the front desk. I remember when I was working in Raleigh, there was only 6 employees in Raleigh, and it was Chance and a guy named Dan Ryan. They called Dan the bus driver. Were like in the office, and it was me, I think Peter, Bernard, a girl named Caitlin, and a girl named Chelsea ran the whole behind the desk stuff. And then one day I was just working back there, and 2 coaches at the same time just quit in Raleigh. And so there were no coaches.
How long ago was this? How many years ago was this now? Come on.
6 years maybe.
Okay, so you've been, by chance maybe one day, but like you said, you followed your passion to be at the gym from climbing. I know when I got into climbing about 2014, so that was about the time when you started coaching. I remember talking to you, and you were already doing some pretty cool stuff at the time, and so I've seen you work with the kids over the last years, and have seen our TRC youth team program grow, not only in number of kids, but also in a sense of the types of performance that you're getting out of the kids, consistently performing at the top end of gyms in the nation, with both at the team level and individuals as well. So you're obviously doing something right. So talking a little bit about habits, so I think a big part of probably helping to create success for your athletes is to help create healthy, positive habits. What sort of habits, can you develop in the sport that might translate to off the field?
Well, there's a lot of cool things that we're able to really focus on right now, actually. I just got off of a book club with them where they're now reading some books with me, that focus on all of these habits. There's a book called Atomic Habits that's really great. There's a book we're reading called How Bad Do You Want It that talks about the mental aspect of climbing. And then there's another book called Why Do We Sleep? So sleeping is the first place that I would start with habits, especially when you think about translating to everything you do in life. If you're getting 6 hours of less than sleep, then any training that you did or anything you tried to learn that day, you have less than 30% retention on it. So we talk a whole lot about every hour of sleep that you get before 12 p.m. at night, which we're running really close to my bedtime right now, Paul. But 10 p.m. is a good time that I like to try to get into bed and away from electronics and stuff. And I'll be in bed from 10 to 7. If I can get 9 hours of sleep, that will affect every training that I do and every training that I did. So that's the first place to start, is sleep. And finally, they're reading these books with me about it, so they're believing me now that someone else said it too.
Right. Yeah, exactly. That's great. No, and that's awesome that you're, like you said, everybody's trying to find ways to continue what we're doing. You know, and a lot of that breaks down to doing it in a virtual sense, like, you know, these Zoom calls.
Yeah.
You know, so I think that you know, it's great that you're finding a way to stay engaged with them. You know, what sorts of things are you telling your athletes to do right now while they're at home? Maybe some of them have a hangboard, maybe some of them don't. I'm assuming you've probably tried to get all of them to have a hangboard, but what sorts of things are you suggesting for your athletes to do right now?
Well, a lot of the suggestions are things that you would do during active recovery periods. Reading is a great one, because what you can do changing your mind right now will have a great effect on you when you go back to reading or go back to climbing, because climbing is heavily mental. Like, if you can understand that the book we're reading right now talks about how your mind drives your body instead of thinking about things that your body drives your mind. So then being able to take that into climbing is changing the way that we look at things. But for really objective things, stuff like mobility is something that we don't really work on a whole lot. So rolling out and hip mobility. Coach Chris and I posted a bunch of videos about hip mobility on Triangle Rock Club's Instagram page, because yeah, man, work out all
got my
things that hurt from your years of, yeah, I'll take a rest day.
Yep.
Is a rest week. It's like, and after you're rested and mobile, then there's a challenge coming up soon. Actually, it's an overhead squat and how close you can get to the wall with it. So once you can do an overhead squat, like with your arms extended, holding a broom or a pole above your head with your feet touching the wall, you're mobile and balanced. Once you can do that, then you get back to finger training, and then we can get back to climbing.
Okay.
right.
So Brad is also doing some weekly chats and live stream via Facebook. So tell us a little about what you're doing, Brad, on your show.
Well, the first show was an impromptu show that I did with another coach from the Northeast I know, and we just went over some goal setting stuff. But the focus of the show is going to be a single guest who will either be a professional climber or a professional coach. I'm going to bring in a couple coaches from our TRC team as a little like, hey, bring the youth climbers in to see the coaches and ask some questions. But the majority of it will be either a professional climber or a professional coach that we'll just interview and wait for questions to come in about climbing and try to help people as best we can. Next week's guest is previous TRC coach Carrie Scott. She had moved out to Colorado, and so she's going to come back. I have I probably, arguably, I think the best coach in the country, Tyson Chaney. He's from Seattle, from Vertical World, which was the first ever climbing gym. So we're going to go through a lot of history. I'll probably have Ben Hanna on later. So a lot of fun guests in the works, and I'm excited to
Nice.
ask him some uncomfortable questions.
Right. Hey, when is your show again? When's it coming on?
Tuesday nights at 6 p.m.
Tuesday nights at 6 p.m. Cool. And that's here on Triangle Rock Club Live. So you can best to check all of our live shows out live, so you can comment and interact with us during the stream. But you can always plug in afterwards too if you're not able or busy at the time of the stream. So, well, Brad, thanks so much for coming out tonight. I really appreciate you joining us. And maybe we'll have you back again in the future for some more training tips and catch up with you and see how the team's doing.
Yeah, you guys are doing a great job. Keep up the good work. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Brad.
Thanks, Brad.
Have a good night.
All right. So next up, we've got Ian King from Onsight Resoles. So he's our featured guest tonight. And many of you may know Ian from being around the Triangle Rock Club community. He's been around and made a stop through and spent some time doing repairs. Ian, how are you doing tonight?
He's getting connected to us, but
getting the audio.
We'll be all set.
Yeah,
but yeah. Ian's very active. He's a mobile Resole company. You hear us, Ian?
Yep, still waiting.
Ian, are you able to hear us? Oh, I think we might be having a little bit of trouble there. Let me see.
There we go. Maybe we see him connecting now. Hey.
There it is.
Hey, am I figuring this out yet?
Yeah. It looks like we got you.
Yeah. All right, cool.
Awesome.
Yeah, so we were trying to stumble through a little introduction.
I'm gonna put these on.
Sounds good.
Okay. Does that work?
Can you hear us?
All right, got you down.
Awesome. There we
So
are.
bad at technology. Sorry.
No worries.
I was on the computer by the house, and I'm in the trailer.
Yeah.
Family's house. So
Yeah.
Something embarrassing could happen if I was in there.
No sweat, man. So Ian is an on-site mobile resoler. So he repairs climbing shoes. His company's name is Onsight Resole. He does all of his work out of a trailer that he pulls around behind his converted Sprinter van all across the country and does on-site repairs of your shoes. So he stops through different areas and gyms and climbing areas, and will do on-site repair for a couple weeks. So throw in your questions about shoe repairs, what types of shoes you're climbing in, what sort of repairs, when they might be needed. We're going to talk to Ian a little bit about his process and so Ian, show us around your shop a little bit here.
So let's kind of go through it. We're over here in the trailer. Try to kind of run you through it. Sanders. This is kind of the kind of fine tuning sander. Bulk removal. That's where we take a bunch of things off at once. Dust collectors. These are all my custom lasts. They kind of help keep the shape of the shoe. Are my shoes going to still come back downturned if they're downturned? Well, if we use this, should do a good job of it. So, drawers of all sorts of different types of rubber, kind of cut out to different, specs of, that's Rand rubber. We have other rubber, kind of a glue station over here. Things in the process, heat lamp, drying rack. Hopefully I showed all that well. It's hard to see on this thing. It's like not giving me a video back, but yeah, kind of try to keep it as organized as possible. But it's kind of one of those micro dirty jobs sort of things too.
Sure.
At the same time,
It's
lots of
it's a
dust.
one-man band over there, huh? So
It's a one-man band, right? Yeah, it's been that way for about I guess this is the third year now, and it's it's all me. Kind of why I did this was probably to start just explain some different. I would work at a resoling shop before in my life, but there's so many questions when you do the mail in, and then it adds extra bit of shipping. People don't know what brands are. There's a lot of myths out there, like urban. Well, I'm not gonna call them myths, but like urban legends about reselling. Like someone told me you can't fix this, and it's like, well, we can. So just trying to get people more value out of it, and kind of create a way for myself to travel. That was kind of where it started.
Sure.
Grew up in North Carolina, so moved around, and I'm moving around a lot.
So I mentioned you on the show last week. We kind of talked about, what people are up to. Obviously, folks are doing a lot less climbing right now. I know a big reason why people are maybe hesitant to send their shoes off for repair is because of the time that they're going to be away from the shoe. They're worried they're going to have to buy another shoe. So this is a really good time to maybe get your shoes repaired. It's probably going to be a few weeks at least before you'll probably be using them again. So you're taking you're taking repairs right now via mail.
Yeah, I got a couple. I mean, I got some right now from Colin over at TRC Durham. They're about ready for you.
Nice.
One of our front desk people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He's also a scrubber too. So get him set up with some acros. I got a couple other people from TRC here, some of the other gyms. Yeah, usually like I said, on site, but now I'm taking in the mail-in stuff. Happy to take care of all of it. Still got less than a week turnaround right now. I might say that, and a bunch come in tomorrow. I've been talking with people all week. It's the mail every day. 3 p.m. That's when you figure out how much you have. But
they can reach you at ian@onsightresoles.com.
Yeah, that's the email. Yep. And so what I've been doing for people is, they can send me a couple of photos, and I can kind of let them know, like, this is what I think. I know a lot of people from TRC Richmond are sending some shoes, and it's going to be cool when I do get up there to meet people that I haven't met before. But
Oh, awesome.
Nice. Well, what you mentioned earlier that obviously we kind of described the whole setup is that you travel around the country throughout the year in your camper sprinter van, post up at different climbing gyms, do repairs for a couple weeks, but also use it to tour the country and follow the nice climbing weather from state.
I try to do that.
So
I try to do that,
So tell us about some of your highlights. What was like one of the cooler stops or climbs that you've been able to do in the last year?
I completely enjoy the Southeast, but during the right season, you know what I mean? And especially with living in the van, the van, it's kind of impossible to have a RV van with an air conditioner on it unless you're plugging in at an RV place every night. So that's why I go out west every summer. Arizona's like my second favorite place. It's like my second home. A lot of cool stuff going on out there, really tight communities. Their gym, like say in Tucson, Rocks and Ropes in the Block has a very TRT vibe where 30 minutes is all the way on the other side of town, but you have a really rad bouldering gym, a really great rope climbing gym. Your membership does both. So, meeting with communities like that, seeing the owners of the gym invite you to a new crag where they are developing limestone. It's kind of some of their main things. And kind of just getting to tour that way. It kind of goes from Carolina to Arizona right now. And, Arkansas is another fun spot. I guess maybe the best part is though, being mobile and like the shoe guy that obviously like lives in his van because he likes to climb. As a climber, you kind of get these sort of secret passes to like, let me show you this, because they know I'm not going to tell anybody else or I wouldn't know how to get back there. So you can kind of check out what's going on in all the different areas. Most of these areas have an awesome climbing coalition that's doing work with the community, a lot of Jim to Crag sort of stuff. But some highlights, yeah, I'd say
I have a
Arizona's always
story.
a highlight.
I have a story.
You got a story?
Yeah. So
Vegas,
yes,
baby.
That's right. Vegas, baby.
Ooh,
So,
there it
That's
is.
right.
so cool thing about Ian, he's big on social media, Instagram, Onsight Resoles. You can follow what he's doing there. So that's the cool thing about Instagram and social media is you can kind of stay connected with people, like even when you're not in your local community. So a couple of buddies of mine a few years ago were doing a trip to Vegas, and we got there, and I saw Ian was, or he might have seen that I was in Vegas from a post that I had done, and he was relatively close, and he was like, "Hey, I'm thinking about rolling up to Vegas. You guys want to hang out?" So we had one of the most epic days of climbing in my life personally.
Pork chop.
Yeah, so hanging out at the
Calico Basin Boulders.
Calico Basin, that's right. The craft
Sweet.
boulders.
The craft boulders.
Gateway Canyon. We kind of went up there, did some, got shown the ropes a little bit. I actually did do some rope climbing, Chris, believe it or not.
Whew.
Yeah, he
Wild.
did. It's
Yes.
crazy.
I was gonna say if Ian didn't vouch for you, I don't know if I believe you.
Yeah. So it was a full fun day of bouldering and sport climbing, and then the Vegas Strip in the distance. And yeah, so that was a cool story. You know, I was completely across the country and then get a message, and I'm climbing with Ian in 2 days. So that was pretty.
And I think Hugh left me some shoes or something, and I shipped them back to Raleigh for him. You know.
That's
All
right.
Oh,
There
yeah.
you go.
But it
So
is like you
Nice.
just got married. I got you. I'll fix your acros. It's cool.
That's
Yeah,
right.
it was just such a win-win-win. We had so much fun. Yeah, hey Chris, the reason why we rope climbed was it went into the shade, and all the boulders
right.
are normally kind
Yeah.
of like out in the open in Vegas, so like they kind of
Mhm.
get hot on all angles, and we found some shady sport climbing.
There you go. That's
It was good.
that's
Yeah,
reasonable. That's
reasonable, right? Paul's reasonable.
Yeah, the climb was
reasonable.
called Drilling Miss Daisy. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
You can,
All
I looked
right.
at that. I think it goes 5'11".
That's
you know,
awesome.
there's a couple do not fall bolts.
Oh yeah.
They kind of stepped off a ledge into like, your belayer should be anchored in each zone. It was, but it offered great. I mean, you got Vegas in the background. We had just done pork chop. That was kind of the highlight of my day. Was really the pork chop boulder. And like, you know me, I'm
That
more
thing
of
is
a.
gorgeous.
It's gorgeous. You got different types of beta to use on it, and anybody that knows me knows I'm mostly a rope climber. That's also where the name Onsight came from. I still I hear a lot about training, a lot about things like that on all over the media nowadays, and I still like Onsight climbing the most. It's a good little guilty pleasure, like first time kind of thing. So
That's right.
It's another little double entendre.
That's nice.
That's
Well,
rad.
Ian,
We've got
did
got a
you
little
have
bit
some
of a
questions?
debate in the chat about 510 rubber and well, not necessarily a debate. Catherine's asking about the special rubber that 510 uses, and JP is denouncing Boreal rubber, original Boreal rubber.
Ooh, well, I got a buddy that likes I don't know, well, if you rope climb in North County, you might know Robert, and he's got these. I'm not that interested in Boreal rubber personally. I kind of keep my top 3 favorites with me at all times, which right now are my favorite's 510.
Agreed.
A lot of people like Vibram, XS Edge, or XS Script 2. That's all the Italian shoes are coming on. But with what's going on right now, and I'm on my last 2 sheets of Vibram XS Edge, so shameless plug. If you want some shoes resold and you are an Edge fan, get in soon, because I have a order that I don't know what's happening with it, because it comes from Italy, and they're getting hit so hard by this. You know, I've been a 510 fan since I was living in Yosemite, but that granite is some of the slickest stuff that I've ever felt. So, I mean, I put 510 on your shoes, I think, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I love it.
That's my main thing. And also it comes to me like 0.2 millimeter thicker. So it kind of seems like a better value.
Yeah.
You know, it's not getting 5 mil versus 4 mil, but yeah, I'm really worried about the supply chain coming from Italy right now, as far as new shoes and just resoling with either the Vibrams. I have, you know, some limited stock right now, but everyth's kind of changing.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, obviously there's going to be some slowdowns of production that may have some supply chain issues with new shoes from, you know, like your Sportivas and your Scarpas, you know, to name the big companies. All of those shoes, as you probably know, are handmade. So they will have their factories will be up and running again. And
the Sportiva factory is running right now, but they're making masks right now, which is really cool. So,
right. Yeah, that's fantastic.
But that's not helping you out with shoes, but it's helping out a bigger cause. But you know, maybe people aren't using their shoes right now. There's other companies to choose from too, that are made in different places as well.
Sure.
You know, Boreal, BN1, Boutours made somewhere else. Unparalleled, made in California. So if import things become an issue, like I could see Unparalleled blowing up, you know, in the States, just because it's here.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right. Well, Ian, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, happy to join you guys.
Yeah, showing us around the shop and giving us a little insight onto some of the different gear and maybe the perks of being a mobile resoler. You know, the fun things, the tough things, obviously. So anyhow, yeah, appreciate your time, man.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, it's
good to see you guys soon. Hopefully.
Yeah, good to see you.
Out in the wild.
Hopefully we get out. Yeah. Fingers crossed.
All right. See you, dude. So next up, we are doing. We're doing the Crag highlight.
How's that going there, Bryce?
Hey.
Looks like we've got you sideways there. There it is. Whoa. Oh, there we go.
Nice. So we're gonna do the Crag highlight. Crag highlight this week is Pilot Mountain. We've got two guests from the TRC community. Both have plenty of experience climbing at Pilot. So we've got Bryce Mahoney right here. Bryce, introduce yourself real quick.
Hey guys, thank you for having me on. Bryce Mahoney. Been climbing at TRC for about 2 years, climbing at Pilot for the past about 8 years, and just really love the climbing community, both at Triangle and all over North Carolina. So stoked to be on here to talk about Pilot specifically.
Nice, awesome, Bryce. How about you, Lee? What's your background with Pilot?
I've been climbing since 2007 or something like that, and basically learned to climb at Pilot. One of the places that I learned, anyways, there in Moores. And yeah, it's great. It's a great crag, and it serves a really good function in the community of being kind of a stepping stone from the gym to going outside. So it is an awesome place.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Lee, I love your setup behind you, by the way, Bryce. Bryce just renovated. We're just like gonna redo our closet, and you've got a sweet gear closet behind you.
Yeah, I'm pretty lucky. I have a detached garage with my office over above it.
Oh,
so like
very nice.
My commute to work is nice. You saw I was doing my hangboard up here. That's my hangboard setup. So this is kind of my little fortress of solitude. But Lee, I did a little bit of Facebook stalking on yours, and I'm pretty stoked to be here because it seems that you've led a lot of the same trad routes that I'm doing, and kind of you frequent a lot of the same crags around the area. So It's nice to virtually meet you. I know I've run into you at Pilot.
I'm sure, yeah.
As soon as I saw it, I was like, I've seen this guy plenty of times.
Nice.
So
Yeah.
I'm glad to get pulled on here.
Yeah. Yeah, good to meet you, man.
So Pilot, like you said, both of you guys, is kind of the gateway, particularly for triangle climbers, learning to climb in the triangle. It's one of the closest crags. A couple unique things about it is, or that makes it a little bit easier to access, is that most of the anchors have been converted to bolted anchors. They're all accessible from the top. So you can set up top ropes in a very safe way in most cases. And that's sustainable as well. And it's also supported by the park system there. So Pilot Mountain is a state park, as many of us know. And you do need to fill out a permit when you climb there. Currently, they are closed, as with all other state parks in North Carolina. So there's no recreational activities happening at any of the parks. But when they do open back up, this is probably one of the premier places to go if you're in the triangle, particularly if you're looking to kind of get into climbing. You know, there is, as I mentioned, top rope, but you've also got the ability to do sport climbing as well as some trad climbing there. So why don't we talk about learning to build anchors? What do you guys think about that?
Lee, I'll let you go ahead with that one first.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about what Pilot is great for in North Carolina, it is, especially in the triangle. I think if you learn to climb a natural, you don't come out to Pilot very much. But if you're in the triangle,
true.
You learn to climb at Pilot, and one of the things that you learn to do, one of the first things you learn to do, I mean, the first thing you learn to do is you top rope your first route. You climb your first route outside, and that can be on a number of routes, and you can have a really good time doing that. But once you start to, want to go on your own and bring other people out, you're going to need to learn to build anchors. And so, Paul, you're right in that they have converted a lot of the anchors at Pilot to bolted anchors. The history of Pilot is pretty interesting. It used to be a lot of top roping. I mean, when you get to the parking lot, you're on top of the cliff. And it was really easy just to walk out to the anchors or to a tree or whatever was there and build your top rope anchor, and then you rappel or you lower or you walk to the bottom, and then you climb. And so you learn to build a top rope anchor as one of the first things that you would do. They're now realizing that with all the volume of people that are going to Pilot, there's a lot of erosion happening at the top of the cliff. There's some sensitive species there and everything. So they're trying to convert it to, you don't go to the top first. You walk around to the bottom, you lead the route. They're bolting more things than they used to. And then you build your anchor up top. So they're actually discouraging any anchors that where you're slinging a tree at this point. So when we're talking about building an anchor at Pilot, you're talking about a 2-bolt anchor. And yeah, that's just a really good skill to learn early on.
Yeah, and I think I'm glad that you brought that up, Lee, because I think that's an important kind of discussion to have right now about the relocation of the new grindstone from the parking lot down to Three Bears. So if you're familiar with Pilot, Three Bears Gully has been extended to another kind of stairwell to go back up that way. Now, if you go the Pinnacle direction, it's still bringing you around underneath parking lots that way. But they have cut off the ability to go straight from anywhere below parking lots down on the top. Lee, you talked about the erosion. The unfortunate part we've had to deal with is there are still people that are walking around Pilot Mountain, the cliff sides, throwing rocks and trash and all this stuff off at the climb. I hope not intentionally at the climbers below, but I can't tell you how many times I've come up on parking lots and somebody is standing right there, and like you scare them because they didn't realize that people are climbing right there. So I was hesitant to why the trail was moving in the first place, and I'm glad that we were able to. I was glad that I was able to take part in the trail, kind of the stairway building and everything. And now that I understand why we did it, not only for the erosion, but getting traffic moved other ways. And I like how you put it, we're encouraging people to go to the bottom and lead their way out, which, for that climber that's safe at Pilot, he goes there, he might on the drive up think, oh, I'm going to climb something harder, but then they get safe and they're like, oh, I'm just going to climb these. Well, now this is kind of making them step it up. Like I climbed Pilot Air I led Pilot Air for the first time in a long time the other week, just because I was kind of forced to. I was like, I don't feel like walking around. I want to top out here. So I'm going to do Pilot Air, or excuse me, Chicken Bone, not Pilot Air, which is in the parking lot area. And I'm excited to see the changes and what Carolina Climbers Coalition has done for the park itself.
Sure. Hey, so speaking of some different climbs from Pilot, what are some of your memories of your first climbs? I was trying to think what my first climb was. I think it was probably Howdy Dude or Howdy Dudette, and right off the Three Bears Gully. But I think I began working the Three Bears roof pretty shortly thereafter.
Wow.
The bear,
yeah, stepped it up big time.
And Baby Bear. Well, I'd been climbing in the gym, for a little bit at that point. So I was all top rope, of course. How about you, Lee? What are your memories?
Yeah, man, it was a while ago, but I remember doing the Three Bears. I remember doing some of the slab stuff in the amphitheater. I remember, I probably remember this just because there's a picture of it on one of my earlier Facebook profile pictures, but we had a top rope set up basically on shrimps, but we were top roping the dihedral to the right of it, which I guess it is a route, but the top rope is not pole dancing. I mean, it starts where pole dancing is, but the dihedral right there, and then you go left. I think that is a route.
Oh yeah.
I think you can lead it.
Single-handed sailor.
That might be it. Yeah, that's it. But there's just a picture of just this really sketchy top rope. It's way over here, and it's under the roof, 3 feet. And yeah, I just remember top roping really early on outside with a bunch of us that we didn't really know what we were doing, but it was a great time. We learned, and everyone's kind of got to do that one way or another.
Yeah. Pilot was my first time climbing outside ever on real rock, and my jiu-jitsu buddy of mine, Alex, was climbing at TRC, and he was like, you should come. I think we went to TRC one time, and he's like, let's go to Pilot next week. And I'm like, sure, whatever. And we go to the parking lots, and it's the top that when they just had the 3 bolts on the top of what I now know. I never knew the top part of Vegematic, but apparently it's called Everyone Is Watching, aptly named because you're literally right at the parking lot now. It's actually where I proposed to my wife as well, which is awesome, which is a totally different story. But we go to these anchors, and I'm like, what are we doing? He's like, we're going to set an anchor up and we're going to rappel down this. And I look over and I'm like, we're going to what? And he's like, we're going to rappel down this. And he's like, weren't you in the military? Didn't you jump out of planes? And I was like, yeah, but they were up there, really close, so you're navigating down that crack that's right next to Everyone Is Watching, at the top of parking lots right there. And I swung out on his anchor. And I mean, even from there, it was just oh, this is amazing. And I did Vegematic. That was my first route, which was pretty awesome because it's a pretty good cut in. And from then I was hooked. I just wanted more. And that was, I think, early 2012 and haven't stopped since.
Nice. So we kind of mentioned earlier that Pilot has kind of got all that you can kind of have to offer, really. So obviously top rope. So sport climb, Chris. Have you done some sport climbing at Pilot Mountain?
I have actually. I like Bryce was saying, it was also my first time climbing outside. And Lee, I think you mentioned the same thing. But yeah.
Any memorable climbs from out there?
Yeah. My first sport lead in North Carolina was Black Rain.
Ooh, okay.
Ooh, whoa.
Which, yeah.
That first clip is a nightmare.
The last clip was a nightmare too.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah, I almost fell from the anchors to the ledge. I was clipping the anchors and I almost slipped off.
Classic.
Not the best fall.
No.
Not the most run
spooky.
out, but definitely not spaced like the bolts at TRC.
No.
Well, when you're young,
Depending on when that was, that might have been one of the only, if the amphitheater was wet, Black Rain was one of the only things you could lead that wasn't 5'10" or up.
It's
Now we've
exactly
got
what it
all these
was.
nice moderates, but it used to be
Yeah.
like that was the warm up.
Yep.
That was.
True that.
It was the only thing
certainly was.
within my skill level.
It's
that
like it
wasn't,
was like a warm up for
wasn't wet.
the belayer as well. Like,
Yeah.
You ready, buddy?
Well, because because the belay area is that like 3 steps, and like the
Mhm.
first part of the route, you're belaying above the person. You're like, I'm not even helping you right now. I'm just like higher than you are, you know?
Exactly.
You're on top rope, and you haven't even left the ground yet.
Yep.
Yeah, my first sport lead there was cow patty bingo next to Pump Street in Ingham. That was a fun one.
Nice.
Because that up at the anchor, I mean, I as I remember, I think the last bolt to the anchor is pretty far, but just the roof alone of the amphitheater is daunting. Like when you're up into it, you're just like, oh my gosh, you know.
Yeah.
And I was pretty straight, and that's a pretty long route for the area as well, I think.
Mhm. Oh, definitely.
Nice. Have you guys done any trad there?
I have I've done a little bit. I've started in little amphitheater, like Grandpa's Belay. I was able to lead that one. That's the only one I've really attempted at the moment.
Sure.
There's a lot of bad rock at Pilot. I mean,
there certainly is.
Yeah, there's a lot of things you can lead and you can place gear, and some of it's probably fine, but I really think that Cracking Up is maybe the only really good trad lead at Pilot from just like a rock quality standpoint. Vegematic is maybe a second, but it's also like kind of sketch.
Kind of marginal.
Right.
But to learn how to place gear, if you're just doing ground school and you're just walking around the base and practicing with someone that knows what they're doing, it's really good for that. And then if you want to get like your first lead ever and maybe like a couple laps on it, Cracking Up is amazing for that.
I think what you said, using ground level cracks to practice horizontal, vertical placement, multi-gear placement, and this goes back into anchor building. You know, it's funny, and I'm sure Lee, you've got it too. Like I have my Pilot mountain anchor kits. Like I know if I'm going to Pilot, they're already set up pretty much, other than checking my knots, because the bolt patterns, they're fairly simple at Pilot Mountain. But when I started to get into trad, that started to change things up. And you start getting into different types of anchors, and using ground level cracks, you can start to bring out your passive and active pro and really think like, what if I am in a scenario where I have a piece here, you know, and I'm pulling in opposing directions, you know, and you're able to pull some force and mimic, you know, pulling gear out of the wall. I think there's a lot of value in a lot of Three Bears itself has tons of places to just practice placing gear. And I think it builds confidence, especially putting it in your hands and seeing how it operates is really nice to be able to do. But I agree with Lee. There's a lot of dangerous rock at Pilot. And Grandpa's Belay I think I was more pumped to just do it and not have to fall on anything just because of that reason. But I was just like, it's so big in there, you know, and I was really happy to kind of do it.
Yeah, if you're gonna do trad, go with someone that knows what they're doing. Go to Moors or go farther west.
Right.
Looking
Yeah.
Glass, whatever. Pilot's not really the place unless you're just learning that first climb.
And I think that's a great thing because that you know, Pilot Mountain is great. You know, I think we've talked about Pilot being the real intro to outdoor climbing area for us in North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia area. And I see Moors and now Soratown being kind of like those step ups. You know, we're so fortunate to have the level and different specificity of climbing around this area. You know, everybody's looking out west, and we have right here in our backyard some of the greatest climbing on earth. And within driving, I'm going to go today and come back tomorrow, which I think is super awesome to be able to do.
Right.
Absolutely.
Lee, do you have any projects out there? Is there any climbs that were out there that you spent some time working on in over the years?
At Pilot, Pilot's the place that
so many.
I hadn't done any of the 12s, and I went there one day just like because we were going and didn't really plan on doing anything. And I looked at Black and Blue Velvet, and it looked amazing. And you can actually set a top rope on it really easily.
and I top roped it once, and I got hooked, and I spent like a year and a half working it, and finally sent it. But that was a long
Nice. I thought you were gonna be like, yeah, day proj, you know.
no, man.
Walk that
It's like-
thing.
It's a really thin V4 into like a 12 minus climbing with like a decent rest, and then like it's probably like a V7 crux up top.
Wow.
And
Yeah, no,
I
I've
fell
heard,
so many times in the middle of that crux.
Bless you.
heard it's pretty sharp, if I remember correct.
Yeah, the bottom's sharp. I mean, there's a lot of small holds. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's beautiful, man. I mean, you know, speaking of the rock quality of Pilot is generally not amazing everywhere. Some parts are great, but the rock quality on Black and Blue is amazing. That swirl pattern and the first 2 or 3 bolts is just unbelievable.
Yeah.
Oh,
If that continued, it would be the most beautiful route ever.
For real.
For real.
Yeah. What about you, Bryce? You got any
Yeah.
projects right now?
Yeah, so my 2 primary projects at Pilot anyways are I'm really set on finishing Papa Bear. You know, for some reason I just really love that route. That roof is insane to be able to get out, and it's kind of a test case for I got the Climb Strong book and really focused my strength training on particularly their philosophy, and noticed that my core strength was really the equalizer in it. And I've noticed that I'm getting closer because I'm focusing on this core strength to being able to make that, you know, not only make the first grab out there, but then get the next 2 sequence to be able to swing out. I mean, you guys have probably done Papa Bear, you know, you know that roof, it's balzer, you know.
Oh, yeah.
And,
It's gnarly.
and so that's one project.
Is,
but my lead project is smooth sailing. I just really love that route on Bigorette. I mean, the top is just awesome, but man, that last move from the blast bolt to the anchor is like smear.
Oh, we might have lost Bryce for a second.
I think we lost Bryce. Oh, there he is.
Here you come back. Hey, Bryce, we can't hear you.
Yeah, we got your ear silent right now. Let's see here. We still can't hear you. Let's see.
He was so stoked about the route, he broke it.
I know.
It's awesome.
Bryce, you there? No. Well, we'll keep talking. We'll see if we can get him plugged back in here in a second. Yeah. So, I mean, I think there's definitely like hard stuff there.
Definitely.
But it's you know, when I think about Pilot, it definitely harkens back to days before the social distancing, where you could get a group together, sling a hammock under a couple classic climbs. You know, you can introduce your friends that have maybe never been climbing before, maybe do a group camping trip out there because it's a state park. There's, you know, it's, you know, get your s'mores on.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and it's a good place to see, you know, when there's 20 people in 50 feet of climbing, what does that look like? And you learn how to be a responsible climber, and you learn how to, you know, there's people, you talk about putting up a hammock, plenty of hammocks at Pilot, and that's fine. But some people will put their hammock across the trail, you know, and they'll just, they're not thinking about their impact and what, when you're sharing this space with not only other climbers, but hikers and runners and people that have dogs. And, you know, do you have a dog that behaves well around other dogs? Like, you know, should you bring that dog if that's not the case? So you really learn, what is it like to climb outside? What is it like to do your first, you know, 5, 7, 8, 10, whatever sport lead, maybe your first trad lead, but you also get to learn what it's like to share that space with other people.
You back with us, Bryce?
We got Bryce.
Yeah,
back.
technical, man. Woo.
Yeah, it happens. It happens to the best of us.
My screen time
Really good
limiter
point,
came
Lee.
on. That was what it was.
Oh, smart.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, that's a really good point, Lee. Like talking about ethics of climbing responsibly, sharing the crag. It's a really great place to learn exactly that.
Oh yeah. Are we just talking about sharing the Crag and Pilot and it being kind of beginner? I think that, yeah, Carolina Climbers Coalition, I think Triangle does a great job. I've been so excited. My first trail day was the Climbers Fest in South Carolina in November, down in South Carolina, and that got me hooked. And then to have one in December to be able to do the trail for Pilot, it's amazing to see how many people come out there and take care of that Crag. And I don't think we've talked about it, but this is an unprecedented year. Pilot and Hanging Rock in the area had about 1.2 million people came last year. Now they're having to implement shuttles to the top of Pilot. That's going to be a pretty big impact. Like starting in April, or starting very soon, probably the next time it opens, from 10 a.m. until I think sunset, you're going to have to park down at the base and pay money to go up to the top. That's going to impact a lot of things. And
I'm glad I bouldered.
Yeah, and hopefully that shows that the climbing community is going to stick around and want to stay and protect that area, and we'll be able to sustain it far longer than the fair weather climber or the fair weather hiker or somebody that may come to the park.
Sure.
Yeah, it's a big deal. And speaking of bouldering, the Moores parking lot is a madhouse these days. So the impact is all over the Piedmont, and I think hopefully people are learning or becoming aware of it, and hoping, carpooling or just generally trying to lessen their impact.
Yeah, I think part of this, Bryce brought it up about the CCC. I obviously am a board member of the CCC, but these are the people that are investing time into repairing anchors and bolts that make climbing safe at Pilot Mountain, helping to organize trail days that reroute the trail like you talked about at Pilot. The CCC is also looking at potentially expanding, working with the state park at Hanging Rock to expand the Mooreswall parking lot. It's something that they recently did at Rumlingbald. So if you're supporting by being a member of the CCC, all of your donations for your dues are going to be going towards those sorts of projects. We're all part of the community. We're all using these resources. And so, if we have the ability, the means to contribute a little bit, then that's going to, increase our ability to, make it so that the access to these locations is more accommodating to the groups that are coming out, but that we're also educating the new groups of people coming to the Crags so they can understand how to respect the resource and share it with other people that are there.
And I think also, partly, I think, Paul, I've talked to you about it, and I haven't really gone too public about it, but I do have, future plans of relocating to the Pilot Mountain area. There's some beginning talks of a kind of a hub hostel going in the area that's going to be focused on climbers, hikers. I don't want to go too far into that, but part of the reason behind that is to have a foothold there, because part of helping us sustain the climbing areas is to educate the community as well as what's important. And you look at the average climber and what they care about. They care about climate change. They care about sustainability. They care about the smaller people, and helping to educate Pilot. Like, I don't know how much time many people spend in Pilot Mountain itself when they actually go to the Crag or not. But if you spend time there, that town is such a loving town. And from what I've experienced, they love climbers. And I think we can do a better job of educating them on what a climber is, what they like to do, how they think about the environment, what they like about small businesses, and really help kind of improve that town. And they're sitting on a gold mine, of opportunity to have people coming there and experiencing Pilot and Hanging Rock. And I think it's awesome that Triple C is working on things like that. So if anybody's wondering if my dues are going to go to anything, they are making a difference, a huge difference. They're buying land and they're making stuff happen for the climbing community in North and South Carolina for sure. And I'm only a member. I'm not even on the board.
Well, great. Well,
endorsement.
well, Lee, Bryce, really appreciate you guys checking in tonight, being a part of the conversation, sharing us a little bit about your experiences and passion for climbing with Pilot Mountain. Like I said, I think, you know, as with most of us in the Triangle, it's our first place that we get to explore climbing outside, but it's something that we can continue to enjoy. I know I've got a young family, so I look forward to kind of, you know, doing many years of camping and trips there. So it's something that, you know, is definitely a renewable resource, if you will. So
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I appreciate you guys' time.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was fun.
All right,
Glad to
awesome.
have you guys.
And so then we'll move on to the very end of the show, which is kind of stuff to keep the stoke.
Yeah.
I know that we have run over a little bit on our anticipated time, as we typically do.
Just a touch.
Yeah, but I think we had a good conversation tonight. What do you think?
Absolutely. Keeping the stoke alive.
Yeah. So, so a couple cool things that I will share with you. I thought that, you know, we talked about some training stuff. You know, I think that, I don't know, many of you guys may have seen on TRC this week, a couple of our TRC members, Anna and Mark, were had built in their backyard and using a backer ladder.
Yeah. That was cool. That was really cool.
So I was going to pull up a picture here.
Here we go.
Can you see the backer ladder here?
Yep, certainly can.
Yeah. So, I mean, this might be something that, you know, you've got a couple trees or a tree in your backyard. You can rig up with some rope, a couple pieces of wood or PVC pipe. So John Backer, one of the Stone Monkeys, that's right? Stone Masters?
So I don't remember which one he was, to be
He was a
honest.
Stone Master.
Cool.
From Yosemite, if anybody watched
Valley Uprising.
Uprising. Actually, our guest Ian King, he has like the smallest cameo in Valley Uprising. So if you ever go back and watch Valley Uprising, look for towards the end they talk about the Yosemite facelift, and there's a picture of Ian there as part of a cleanup crew. Pretty cool. So John Backer, one of the Stone Masters, developed this as a way to train upper body strength and endurance. So that's a pretty cool thing that you can kind of, you know, if you've got some time, you can order some of these supplies from a hardware store or something and build this in your backyard while you're staying at home.
Definitely.
Here. What do you got, Chris?
I mean, in the same vein with training, the Power Company podcast is a great way to, is a really good podcast about training and things like that. A lot of it may not be currently relevant, but a lot of it is probably still really, really useful to listen to. Keep your site going.
Nice. Yeah. You know, like I said, there's all sorts of resources out there for training and staying active. Obviously, TRC is putting out live podcasts. Coach Bradley is also, like I said, he's going to have a show, but he's also going to be working to develop some climber-specific training content for us that we'll be sharing. There's all sorts of stuff online for small, you know, routines that you can do at your house. You know, a couple other things. Books. We talked about books last week. I'm reading the Mark Sennett book right now, still finishing that up. But a couple other books that I was thinking about. Another great author is John Krakauer. So he's a climber, author. He's got, of course, the famous Into Thin Air book about the Mount Everest expedition and disaster in 1996. Made a couple movies about that. And then Eiger Dreams. That is actually maybe even more a favorite of mine. That's basically a collection of, I think 8 or 9, maybe 10 of his articles that he wrote for various outdoor magazines in the 80s. That was essentially what he did. He was a journalist, but he would write these long, kind of extensive articles, 10, 15, 18-page long articles for magazines. And it, kind of took a investigative journalism approach to outdoor activities. So it's, very in-depth, very knowledgeable content, nonfiction. So that's all pretty cool. So you can obviously purchase these books, bookstores, things like that, have used versions. There's also audiobooks that, are available for download right now as well.
Yeah.
So, anything from the audience?
Just having some discussion in there about pilot rock quality and stuff. And by the way, thank you, Adriel. I think it's a good choice. Yeah.
All right. Well,
cool.
We made it through another week, everybody.
Great talking with everybody.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in. Really kept the conversation moving this week. We'll look to continue that, in weeks to come. Have a lineup of guests. Please, think about questions and comments. We'll post out a couple days in advance who's going to be on the show, and if you want to throw in there any suggested comments or questions, we'll try to address those during the show, as well as watching us live. If you want to go ahead and chime in and interact, and who knows, you might find your way onto the show. You might have a cool story or something to share with us, and we want to bring you on next week. So
absolutely.
Yeah. So Shoeless, appreciate it.
Cheers, Paul.
Yeah, and we'll see everybody next week.
Can't wait to see you guys next week.
All right.